1 second. Let me see. Dr. Bettis, can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Great. Okay. This is Tristan Crossland. I'm with the United Corpus Christi Chamber of Commerce. How are you doing today?
Pretty good, thank you. How are you doing?
Doing well. Mr. Hunter, can you hear us?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Mr. Dotson, can you hear us?
I can, thank you.
Great. Okay. All right. Still trying to get everyone in here. For those of you who've already joined, my name is Tristan Crossland. I'm with the United Corpus Christi Chamber of Commerce. Just wanted to say thank you for joining us today for this call. We still have about another 5 minutes or so if you'll just bear with me while I try to get all our participants unmuted. Thanks. John, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great.
Hi, Todd.
Mr. Elliff, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Okay. And if any of our participants find trouble with their mic, if it shows that you're muted and you're unable to mute yourself, just message in the chat directly to me, the host, and I'll be able to fix that on my end. Looks like right now we're just waiting on Representative Herrero and Dr. Zerwas.
Other thoughts around reopening, whether it be your individual office internally or what you're seeing happening in your community, the leadership role that you're playing in the reopening? I know there's been some documents shared around guidance for business reopening. How much of that is being directed by your chambers? How much of it is being directed by your municipalities, states, that type of thing? Anybody want to share anything on that aspect? Yeah, we did just one
Dr. Zerwas, can you hear me?
I can. You hear me?
Yep. All right. We're just waiting on Representative Herrero, and then we should have everyone here.
Oh, great. Good. Technology works. How are you doing, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, he's muted. Here, there we go. That's on your end.
There you go, John.
Hey, how are you?
Just fine. It's good to see you, friend.
Likewise, likewise. I hope you're corona-free.
Well, we are from the beer.
That's not good. That's not the corona you don't want.
No, we appreciate you, John. done a good job statewide. And
Well, thanks. It's good to, I'm glad to be involved. It's unfortunate we are having to deal with it, but, lots of people pedaling hard, and I think we're going to be fine, So.
I see, I didn't see, but the governor is on national news, I guess, with the president, and they're talking about Texas right now, I guess. So
I heard they were. I thought it was at 1 o'clock, and I don't know if that's was right. I didn't see it, regardless, So
yeah, I just heard about it.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
You get to see many of our old colleagues.
I don't see them, but I do hear from them.
I bet you do.
Which is good. I enjoy that, and especially Gio, since he took my role.
Gosh.
So that poor guy.
Oh man.
Yeah, what a struggle that's going to be, I'll tell you.
In the Corpus Christi area in Port Aransas, we have a UT Marine Science Institute. Not in the health arena as much, and they do a really, really good job. Very good job.
Yeah, we gave them some money to try to, get repaired from Harvey, as I recall.
That's right.
So you were a big part of making that happen. So.
Well, between you and Blifford, I made sure that we always talked about Port Aransas.
Yeah, it's you looked out for him very well. So.
Well, the whole Corpus Christi, what's tough for all of us, and I know you know it because you're really up the coast from us originally, but June 1st is hurricane season. So we go from this, and now we're going into weather time. So
yeah, and
don't need that.
Yeah, well, and this is not going away. It's going to be here for the whole hurricane season.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
Yeah, we'll.
We have everyone here now.
Okay.
So make sure, Representative Herrero, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Great.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. John LaRue with the Chamber here for our what are turning out to be weekly webinar calls on something of significance to the region and to not just the business community, but the community overall. And they seem to be getting better. Last week's with some of our state legislators and with the governor's office on opening up was, I think, very successful. And I think this one has the potential of topping it. At that meeting, I think it was Representative Hunter said something about we're going into May and it was Mental Health Awareness Month, and maybe we ought to look at something around that. So I got on the phone with him after that, and we said, this is perfect opportunity with what's going on with COVID-19, with its impact on people, on children, on workers. What better opportunity than the beginning of the month to talk about this and what we can do to try to help prevent stress, prevent suicide, work with our veterans and with our students to help them get through this. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to turn it over. I know Abel has another call, I think at 4. So Representative Herrero, if you'd like to kick it off and then pass it on to Todd, and he'll introduce some of the other.
Yes, thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to participate in this very important conference. I want to thank Dr. Zerwas for his participation. I know he's extremely busy with everything that he's handling on behalf of the state. So thank you, Dr. Zerwas. Thank you, Todd, also as well, for always taking the charge on issues that are important to the whole community. So once again, thank you, the United Chamber, for hosting this event, for allowing us to participate. Having had experiences with individuals, both family and friends, some either that have committed suicide or others that have attempted suicide, this is a very dear, important issue to me that I understand and know that affects a lot of individuals. Now under these COVID-19 circumstances where individuals are losing their jobs or, having to shut their business down, it's putting a lot of financial strain, a lot of personal stress on families, students having to learn. Distance learning is extremely difficult as well, and an adjustment. And so it's putting a lot of strain on a lot of individuals. Having had relatives of mine that have served in the military, it's a constant struggle for them to be able to adapt to civilian life, especially under the circumstances that they've been under. Having worked with officers and law enforcement, individuals that have come across individuals in the community that have mental health issues, that have found themselves in the criminal justice system. In some cases, some of them receiving the mental health care that they need in jails where it shouldn't be that they're receiving this care. So I know that our Nueces County Judge, Barbara Canales, has made this a priority in making sure that we help those individuals with mental health issues to receive the health and care that they need. I know that through Dr. Zerwas and Chairman Hunter, the legislature, as well as through Speaker Bonin, obviously we made it a priority to make sure that we helped individuals. I know that in working with the students and faculty across the community that this is an ongoing issue, as well as it affects teenagers and the bullying and the responses that they have to those issues. So the mental health issues, the intellectual disabilities, the mental health in general, as it affects all of our lives in every facet, is important. And it is more of what we need to do to help individuals. So we look forward to working with our colleagues in the legislature, working with individuals, community leaders, doctors, children, students, everyone who may provide some insight on how we can best assist those individuals that are crying out for help or that are contemplating circumstances that would not be in their best interest, things that we need to do to continue to help individuals, our community, children, adults, veterans. This is a collaborative effort, and I'm glad that I'm able to participate in that. And once again, thank you, Chairman Todd Hunter, for the legislation that you filed this legislative session and for helping all of us in the legislature make sure that this issue is at the forefront in working with our community leaders. And so with that, Chairman Todd Hunter, thank you again for your assistance and your help, and I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks. Thank you, Abel. And the one thing I want to tell all the listeners and the viewers is Abel was a great team leader with me on a lot of the legislation that we got passed for the Coastal Bend community. And so it's been a great teamwork effort. And he has chaired the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee in the past. And so he's heard a lot of the mental health issues throughout the years from all over the perspective. So, by the way, thank you, Abel, and appreciate it. John
Thank you,
LaRue,
Todd.
yeah, John LaRue, thank you to the United Chamber. You jumped right on this issue. This is an issue that people sometimes don't want to talk about. My view is we should shine the light right on it. As you indicated, May is Mental Awareness Month. That's May. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. There's no better program right now than what the United Chamber is doing on this topic. And let's just be honest with everybody. Dr. Zerwas and I were talking right before. The Coastal Bend's been hit a bunch. We got hit in 2017 by a hurricane. That's trauma. That is trauma. We got whacked with mental health right there. And now all of a sudden we're in the new hurricane, coronavirus. So we got a double hit. And then as Dr. Zerwas and I were talking, and Abel knows, June 1st, we start hurricane season. So if there's any community that shows pride and strength, it's Coastal Bend region. We're tried, we're true, we're experienced, and we know how to get through it. But the topic of mental health education, mental health awareness, suicide prevention, we got to talk about, we save one person, it's worth everything. So John and the United Chamber, thank you for putting this on. And I want to recognize some people. Dr. Cissy Perez, wave your hand so they see you. Dr. Scott Elliff, wave your hand. These are two people who have given their soul and have given their time to the community to try to help tackle mental health and suicide. And they've spent umpteen hours trying to achieve these goals, and they have. And you're talking about heroes that sometimes they don't get recognized. Here's two individuals that are our heroes. They've done everything they can, and they're continuing, and they're keeping the pedal to the metal. So I want to thank you too for what you've done, and I want to thank you for being on this program. Dotson Lewis is on. Dotson is the Veterans Coordinator for the Veterans Roundtable. He works with our office on veterans information. The veteran community, huge in the mental health arena. And Dotson and his colleagues have done a great job getting information spread throughout the community. And we want to thank you as well. He does a weekly radio program, has a weekly meeting, coordinates you and all the veterans groups. Thank you. The great thing about the Coastal Bend, we're a military, we're a veteran community, and there's nothing better than focusing on mental health awareness. So I want to thank you. And then Dr. Zerwas, I want you to know, we've got a bunch of folks watching, and we have high school students. And Dr. Perez and Dr. Elliff, along with Angie Flores of my office, coordinated students in the high school region because they'd been impacted. And I'm going to tell you, they came together with their families and their parents and their friends. And what a lot of people don't know is that some of the legislation that Abel and I and Senator Hinojosa worked on during the session from the Coastal Bend came from their group of high school students. And one of those is Texas recognizing Suicide Awareness Month. That came from this region. And then a lot of the data reporting right now, the governor signed those laws. He's been a tremendous help to this community on mental health. And he signed our laws that their task force came through. And so I have to credit our community. It's not me, it's the community. And so I wanted you to be aware you've got a great audience here of people who care. And we have also a new group who've been very, very helpful. And that is our college mental health awareness group. And we've been meeting by video for the last few weeks. And they are going to work alongside of our groups here in the community, alongside with the other schools. And they have come up with some great ideas on promoting mental health awareness. And they're on the video here today. So we've got our college organization, we've got our high school organization, and this community is going to do everything they can do to save everybody. And I want to thank all of them for their work and their effort, and I want them to be notified, and I want them to be recognized. Now, let me give you all that are listening some resources. You know, we're going through the coronavirus, and Dr. Zerwas is going to tell you a little bit of information here in a minute. But I particularly focus, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. The Texas Health and Human Services and Department of State Health Services is a great source for resources and help on mental health. And I can't emphasize enough, let's not run from suicide prevention and mental health awareness. It's too important Today, it's an important topic. If you go to their websites, you can get mental health resources, and in particular, there is a COVID-19 mental health support line. That number is 833-986-1919. 833-986-1919. Call, utilize those services. And anybody that's on this program, for example, locally, please contact all of us to get you the resources. My view is anybody we can help, that is the game. And a final comment, the Attorney General came out today, and this relates to stress and mental health. And I want to put this little warning out. Unfortunately, when we have catastrophes, we have improper conduct, scammers. And what I want you to know is there are some groups impersonating state agencies or agencies trying to fleece people of money, putting you under stress. And my warning to you is don't fall for that information. And there's nothing worse than having that stress and mental pressure while you're going through this time. So it's an indirect issue, but I want people to be aware because I want to keep you as stress-free and mental healthy as we can. So at this time, it's my great honor, and I want everybody to know he has been a great friend of mine personally, but he's been a great friend of the Coastal Bend. And I want to tell you a little bit about Dr. John Zerwas. He's got his bio out there, but I want to make some comments. He's been a physician for more than 30 years. He is currently the University of Texas System Executive Vice Chancellor of Health Affairs. We couldn't have a better person for this program. My knowledge has been, he's been a personal friend of mine throughout the years. He has been a state representative for Fort Bend County. He did a tremendous job for the state of Texas as the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. He was also chairman of higher education. I remember when he was chairman of general investigation. But the most important thing is he was a member of the Calendars Committee, which was his most important role when he served with me. Dr. Zerwas, for most of you, has been acknowledged by Governor Abbott to be in charge of a lot of the health supplies, the personal protection equipment, reagents, a lot of what is going on to combat COVID-19. But he has also overseen and been involved in most all mental health efforts in the state of Texas. And he's been a great friend, but a great advisor to me on health issues. And we're very, very honored that he would take the time to be with us today. So it's no greater honor than to introduce my great friend, Dr. John Zerwas.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a very kind introduction, and truly I value that friendship that you and I have had, and you have been a great advocate, great representative for the Coastal Bend, but been a great mentor to me. You know, at times when I was just learning the ropes of a number of things, you were there as a person who had been around the block and knew where things were, knew how to get things done, and that was incredibly helpful to me through my whole journey of serving in the legislature. So thank you for that, and thank you for your continued service, because y'all are going to have a big lift come January 21, and I'll I'll be right there with you in spirit. It'll be a big list. So, well, let me and just say, both you and Representative Herrero had done a terrific job of representing the area, and he likewise is a great friend of mine. And so y'all are very, very well served by the folks that you have in the legislature. And one thing about people, when they come from an area, the R and the D disappear from the back of their name, and they work together for the benefit of the community. My area, Fort Bend County, it's exactly the same way. Political differences subside, and you just do what's right for the community. Well, back in mid-March, I was sort of tapped to serve in this role, as the chairman has said, to really help sort of, shepherd our supply lines and things of that nature, which were in great jeopardy, frankly, in terms of what we were seeing on the horizon of a communicable disease, highly communicable disease, and the need for all the personal protection equipment, as well as a potential need for hospital beds and manpower to handle a surge of infected patients, similar to what we saw in New York and certainly in Italy. I think we were all in horror about what we were seeing in those areas, and it was not unfathomable that couldn't happen here in Texas. And so, God blessed us with the opportunity to prepare for this a little bit more and to, do the things that the governor and our leadership counseled us to do, which was to, basically try to avoid those settings where lots of people are together, to try to separate from each other, to try not to get out unless we had to. The stay-at-home directive was good, but probably the thing that, was as effective as anything was the fact that Texans understood how serious this disease was, and they chose not to, get into settings where they were likely to infect one another. And so we had the opportunity to not just bend the curve, as they like to say, but I think Texas actually is crushing the curve. And so by virtue of that, we are in a unique position today that we've been able to actually start to revitalize our business community out there with kind of small baby steps here at first to see how that goes, make sure we don't see any kind of all of a sudden resurgence of the disease to an extent that we'd have to take some steps backwards. But certainly, we have been very, very effective by virtue of each and every person in this state taking very seriously the only things that we had in our armamentarium. As a physician, I typically have a lot of things, that I can treat patients with, from drugs and devices and things of that nature. Well, with this disease, we didn't have that. We've seen some things come on the horizon here, but to date, really, we don't have that magic bullet to treat this disease and stuff. So the only things we have, especially with a communicable viral disease, are those good public health patterns of behavior that we know will at least prevent us from getting the disease. We know how it's transmitted, and we therefore know how we can avoid getting it. We also know that it is definitely one that our more senior individual Texans get. They can get a much more serious disease than the younger generation of people. And we know people who have other diseases on top of things going on can get a more serious illness than that. And so, those are people that we need to, what we call cocoon. We need to, rally around them and protect them from this. Or those that aren't as susceptible to the ravages of these disease, they can weather this thing out, frankly, pretty well. But the ones that can't, they need for us to protect them until we come up with a vaccine and until we come up with some type of a therapeutic agent that might be effective in terms of treating the disease. So we find ourselves at a kind of a unique nexus here, where we have been, we the people of the state of Texas have been effective in minimizing, the spread of the disease to the extent that it would overwhelm our healthcare systems. That we can now say, okay, we've got some room to work here. Let's see if we can revitalize some of our businesses, which have been dormant for a few weeks, and get them back up and running, and do that in a way that takes, kind of baby steps at first, and then kind of grow those over the month of May. So May is a mental awareness month, and I applaud you all for looking at that. It's a very serious situation, even when you don't have, the kind of, disaster that we have right now. It's a very serious condition. And as the chairman has said, it's one that, he and I have worked closely on and making sure that we have put the adequate amount of resources in place so that people can get the kind of treatments that they need. And we know also that that times like this and the hurricanes that have ravaged the coastal bend and these things, we know that, mental health is just another one of those things that can actually get worse during this time. And so those individuals that dedicate their lives to treating people in these circumstances are to be applauded greatly. And I appreciate incredibly the amount of work that they do, the kind of work that they do and stuff. So it's just very, very important at times like this. I remember, Mr. Chairman, when the Appropriations Committee was conducting hearings on the post-Harvey situation and coming around. In fact, we did one down in the Corpus area there to hear from the local community, the local leaders, and the individuals who had been impacted. Mental health was consistently a very, very important part of this, not just among the adults, but throughout the school-age children and all the way on up. And so it's something that always has to be in your mind as we start to go through these things. And it has been, part of our conversation and concern as we've gone through this current disaster. We've been very focused on trying to deal with the virus itself and trying to contain it. But we also recognize that the anxiety and the stress that comes along with this particular type of disaster, a pandemic, for which, frankly, really none of us have ever experienced or have any sense of awareness about. But we know suicides are up, and we know that people have exacerbations of mental illness that's on the rise. And so these are all things that fortunately we have professionals that can help with these things. You have some on this panel today that can speak to it much better than me. We just need to be aware that if people have cardiac conditions that they have to deal with, they get worse during this time. They have a variety of other pulmonary conditions, other things that can get worse during these kinds of situations. But people also have mental health conditions. And so those are things that have to be dealt with. And fortunately, they can be dealt with by shining the light on them, as the chairman has said, and really taking the stigma away from people having a concern that it's some sign of weakness or anything like that. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all humans, and we're all humans because of our brain and the mental capacity that we all have. The brain being, the organ that we commonly overlook, because we're so focused on the heart and the lungs and the kidney and the liver. This is an incredibly important part of who we are. And fortunately, there's people that can help us with these things when we get into these very stressful environments. And so, Chairman, I'll stop there. I'm happy to take any questions that might be unique to the circumstance that I find myself working in right now. But I know that there's others that really, should address the issues that we're looking at today, and that is issues that surround mental health and in times of a disaster.
Thank you, Dr. Zerwas. John, are you going to introduce the next panelist, or do you want to take some questions now, Dr. Zerwas?
I don't know how long the doctor has to stay with us. We might want to take some questions from him.
I'm good till 4:30.
Okay.
Then why don't we go ahead to Dr. Elliff and Dr. Perez and Dotson, and then we'll make sure John is able to get out of here right before 4:30.
Okay, Todd, why don't you're much more expert on this topic than I am. If you want to introduce them, go ahead.
So everybody knows we're going to have 3 more folks participating. And one of them is Dotson Lewis, who Dotson runs the Veterans Roundtable. He will be speaking third. He has provided veterans resources, veterans information throughout the Coastal Bend region, and has been very, very helpful in the area of mental health. especially in the veterans community, which have been great to work with, and they do a great job. But not just the veterans, their families, as well as military personnel. We will also be hearing from Dr. Scott Elliff. Dr. Elliff, as you know, is the former superintendent of our Corpus Christi schools. He has been a tremendous advocate, a great spokesman for many of our colleges and universities, especially Texas A&M University Corpus Christi. But he has been really focused on helping bring awareness to the mental health community, and has done a great job, what I call counseling as well as mediating with various groups to bring the attention forward. And along with him is Dr. Cissy Perez, who is a great help over at West Oso ISD, but she and her daughter and some of her friends really caused the ball to steamroll, to really bring awareness, and came up, both Cissy and Scott came up with creative ideas. But we listened to high school students on ideas that mattered and slogans that matter and verbiage that matter. And so both Scott and Cissy have done a tremendous job for the community doing this. And we're working with our college mental awareness group, and they have some ideas we'll be building on, and we're bringing it go forward. So Scott and Cissy, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you decide who goes first or second.
Scott, you want to go first?
Why don't you go first, Cissy, and just talk a little bit about how the task force got underway and what really spurred you into action and brought us all into the work.
Okay, well, a couple of years ago, y'all may have heard, can you hear me?
Yes.
A couple of years ago, you may have heard that there were some suicides that occurred at Veterans Memorial High School, and they were within weeks of each other. Well, my daughter goes to school there. In fact, she's a senior, the class of 2020, which is also going through this pandemic of, also going through this, pandemic of graduation cancellations or postponements, etc. But we got together with Representative Todd Hunter, and I contacted Scott Elliff as well when after that second suicide had happened within weeks of each other, because my daughter happened to know the little girl who committed suicide, and she and her basketball teammates knew the little girl very well, and they were traumatized because they really felt like they had no idea. They didn't recognize any warning signs, etc. It was just a horrible, horrible time. And so after that second one, like I said, we just felt like, well, something has to happen. So they've got to be able to talk about this because there's such a stigma that people don't want to talk about this. And so that's how we kind of got the ball rolling. Held some symposiums, got the task force together, did some research. Scott can probably talk more about that on the sessions that we had. But since then, we've been making sure that every time that there's maybe the holiday blues, or maybe, during the Christmas holidays, people kind of get the blues sometimes, or right now during the transition of school closure, that caused, a loss right there. And kids were wondering, and parents, how they were going to grieve through that, because that is also a loss. So we've been trying to do activities with teens to help them cope during times like this. So since we're talking to the chamber, after Scott speaks, I just kind of thought of some things that maybe businesses may want to be aware of parents and kids that are going through some things right now that we've been hearing. We've been hearing some outcries about that.
So thank you, Cissy. When we began this work back in January of 2019, the initial emphasis was on developing recommendations that could be handled during the legislative session. And so we brought together in two different forums, literally hundreds of people people from the community, adults and young people, because that voice of our teenagers themselves was so important. And also our veterans that Dotson will talk about in just a moment, brought them together to identify some recommendations for the legislature immediately since they were meeting in session. We collaboratively developed a list of recommendations that were then turned into legislation that was filed. We had a couple of important bills that were passed. One, really an awareness, an issue of awareness, which was to designate September as Suicide Awareness Month in Texas. And the second was to improve data collection around suicide. Thank you, Representative Hunter, for shepherding that forward for us. The next series of forums, which really Dr. Perez took the leadership role in, were forums that were designed to amplify the voice of young people and to give them the power to come up with their own plans to implement in their school communities to help address this issue of teen suicide. It's a fact that most people are surprised to hear. Around the United States, nationally, about 7% of adolescents have given strong consideration to taking their own lives. But for some reason, in the state of Texas, that rate is much higher. About 13% of Texas adolescents report that they have given strong consideration to suicide. So it's a very serious issue here. I am not a mental health professional. I'm an educator, but it's been an honor to facilitate some of this work along with Dr. Perez. I think it's extremely important. And I think given what Representative Hunter pointed to earlier, which is the double traumas of Hurricane Harvey, and now the real trauma that everyone is experiencing, but our young people are experiencing in a unique way, which is COVID-19 and the sort of collateral damage from the pandemic, we need to be aware and we need to be vigilant and we need to be active. I too have a suggestion for the Chamber of Commerce and the business community. I don't know if it's going to be Dr. Perez's same suggestion, but when the time is right, I'll be happy to share that with you. There are some things that the business community can easily plug into that would help amplify this work around teen suicide, but also mental health overall for our community during this time when we know that not only will we likely see a spike in suicidal ideation, but we're going to see a spike in domestic violence. I see Francis Wilson is on this call, and a spike in child abuse. And as a CASA volunteer, I'm particularly concerned about that. Those children right now who are in foster care, who are in need of and receiving therapy services, all of that is having to be accomplished virtually through Zoom meetings, just like we're having right now. So there's a strain on that system as well. So it's a real and present sort of collateral issue that we need to be aware of in the community. And so I would like to come back with one idea later. Thank you, Todd.
Anything else, Cissy?
No, I guess when we're at the point, if you'd like us to kind of share some things that we're noticing but maybe you want to talk to Dotson first or however order.
All right, we'll get Dotson and then we'll come back. Before I introduce Dotson, Angie will be coordinating, and we're already planning a child care, child abuse, domestic violence awareness. And they're going to coordinate with the United Chamber and some other groups. So that's an excellent idea, Scott. And unfortunately, when we have these catastrophe situations, it spurs things on like this. And this community also did a great job on coming up with various laws. I know Representative Herrero has been an author of those laws. I know Dr. Zerwas in his time in the House has been involved with those laws as well as our office. So that will be getting coordinated, and Angie's going to coordinate with you and all our groups and the chamber. So thank you for bringing it up. It's an excellent, excellent teleconference. At this time, I'd like to introduce Dotson Lewis. Dotson, it basically is a veterans coordinator, but really throughout the whole community. And he runs what we call the Veterans Roundtable each week and coordinates with all the veteran community and has a great radio show on Saturdays. And he has been very active in veteran suicide information, resources, and coordinating and getting people in contact. So Dotson, why don't you take it away?
Well, thanks, Todd and Cissy and Scott. It was really a revelation to me to be on the task force. And I have a lot of confidence in the younger generation now. Just as you probably know, we got a lot of ideas and so forth. We've been rather proactive in the veterans, but just for a few statistics, first, we have almost 32,000 veterans in Nueces County. We have in the country right now, we have over 7,500 veteran suicides every year, about 22 a day. And we have been proactive. We have a new department set up within the Veterans Administration to do research on the suicides and the reason for them. And one of our biggest concerns now is veterans that are now returning from the service. They may surface. We have a number of issues that we've identified to try to help them with those problems, to make sure that when they transition, and it's a change in life transition. I went through it, I'm not going to say how long ago when I retired from the service, but it's something, and we found recently our suicides have about where they are, they haven't changed much. One of the problems that we had with our veteran suicide, was the Department of Defense was counting all the active duty suicides as part of the veteran suicides. And we're trying to get that taken care of so they understand it. And it's a little bit different with veterans than it is with our active duty, even though our active duty suicides have increased, particularly in the Navy and particularly with the women naval people. So it's something that we're concerned with. And every week we have briefings, we discuss it, we identify the people that are out of the service, discuss with them the problems, and then we have a veterans clinic. Some people, we get calls from people that we call it a vet clinic, and some people want their dog shampooed, but that's not what we do. And we have meetings with family violence, and that's what the thing that's increased on us right now, we've noticed, is family violence. But we do individual readjustment counseling. We do group meetings and counseling, which most of them are now like we're doing here. We have military sexual trauma counseling, bereavement counseling, marital and family counseling, employment counseling and guidance, benefits assistance and referrals, substance abuse, and information referral. And that is one of our larger problems at the moment. And we are trying to serve as a liaison between the community agencies. And we do have quite a bit of research going on at the VA. As I said earlier, they have now established a department that is studying the suicides, and we are proactive with the people getting out. And if we hear a problem like right now, a lot of our people, most percentage of our veterans right now are Vietnam veterans. That's the greatest group that we have, and they are having some problems. And so we have a group of our people that volunteer to call people every day. And if there's any concern we have somebody go over, we talk to them, and it's helped a lot. And we're getting a lot more activity from the veterans because being sitting home, and a lot of them are single, and some of them, they're older, and they're worrying about they're in the group that are the most liable to get this virus that we have. Incidentally, in Nueces County, my age group has no positive test so far, just for your information. I haven't heard today's, but it's something that we need to be proactive about. And Chairman Hunter, again, I appreciate your help and what we've done in the last 6 or 8 months statewide, and with the 2 bills that were passed, and they listened to us. And I think Scott and Cissy will agree that they listened to what we had to say, and it is making a difference. It's going to make a difference later on. And any questions anyone has regarding suicides or anything, they have suggestions, why, please feel free to contact me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dotson, and we really appreciate. And I want to note that the governor's office has been extremely supportive, and I know Dr. Perez has actually worked on one of his task force statewide. And Dr. Zerwas, University of Texas, and we appreciate you for your involvement and the system being involved down here. We also have an A&M system. They are plugged in on the task force here, as well as Del Mar College. So we've been blessed to have 3 universities helping us down here. Dr. Perez and Scott, why don't you let the listeners or viewers, and I'd like Dr. Zerwas to hear some of the projects that some of the students were doing and some of the ideas that you've all come up with.
Okay, well, the symposiums that we held had at least 150 to 200 teenagers from across the area, and that was just by us contacting many of the principals that we knew. So we got the students to come gather together and create some suggestions for us to move forward, so that way Representative Hunter could move forward. And when HCR 137, I believe it was, for Suicide Prevention Month passed, what that did was it gave kids permission, you know, that it was okay to talk about suicide and suicide prevention, at least for the month of September. And so they don't have to feel like it's such a stigma. Right now, what I was going to say is that I'm assistant superintendent at West Oso, but I'm also a parent of a teenager. And I know a lot of teenagers are having nightmares. And I just saw something on Channel 6 last night, actually news, that they were talking about that. If you notice that, you know, students or people are having a lot of nightmares, it's because of so many changes that they're going through right now and so much unpredictability. I know we've had a spike in parents contacting us and grandparents contacting us, hopeless. They feel helpless, they feel hopeless because they feel like their children or grandchildren that they're raising are falling behind with the work that they're having to do, whether it's online or whether it's the packets that they've been receiving. And we've had actually a couple of calls from different agencies where parents they have suicide ideation because they're just feeling like they have no way to help their kids, that their children are falling behind. What can they do? And I guess because some of the businesses are starting to open, the parents are having to start to come back to work, then they're worried also about what are they going to do with their kids because their kids aren't in school. So they're just, you know, so worried. And we've really tried to put the word out that if the parents had a place where they could, if they're going back to work, if maybe during their break time, that they have a computer that they can go to email teachers or email their principals or email their, you know, child's counselor or even email us. Some of them have just emailed central office and we make sure that we respond. That connection has really been a big help according to the parents that have responded. And they're feeling like, okay, you know, it is not helpless, it is not hopeless. They're going to help my child catch up. That needs to be kind of communicated. If you can help us with that, I think that's going to go a long way with your staff that returns to work, that they'll feel like there's still some sort of a connection that they can make with us, and you know, with their wherever they go to school. If there's a connection that they can make, then they know that they can get help even when the parent gets home. A lot of times, I think people are thinking that teachers are only helping during the school day, and it's not. I mean, our teachers are, we see them on calls at 8 o'clock at night, 8:30 at night, whatever, because parents are working during the day. They can't help the children. So know that if they email their teachers, they should be getting a response. And if they're not, then they need to contact their principal or they need to contact central office and say, I'm not getting a response, because they shouldn't be out there alone. We're here to help them. That's what we're supposed to be doing. So please know that. That's why I'm just saying that I think that would be a good idea. And if they can journal some things about what they're going through right now, because we don't know when this is going to end. We're already pushing our summer school. We're not going to have summer school in June. After all, we're going to have summer school in July. And it's going to be kind of a hybrid, a virtual, even continued packets if we have to, format. And we're looking at what are we going to do in the fall as well. But this thing is not going away as quickly as we would wish it would. So we're going to have to work together to stay connected, from the families to the schools. And this way the kids know, okay, they're communicating. That goes a long, long way. But if you're not getting a response, tell the parents, and you all as parents as well, if you're not getting a response from teachers, please let those principals know, because we can't do anything about it unless we know about it.
If I could jump in also with an idea, a possible suggestion for the business community. As I scroll through the participants in this webinar, I see folks from the business community, from different agencies, nonprofit organizations. So there's a really good mix of folks here. What I'm going to suggest here might not have an immediate opportunity for implementation because we are separated now in physical space by this pandemic. We won't be forever. And so I know that some of you who are working in the business community may be thinking, this is a serious problem, but what can my company do? What can my business do? And so I'm going to give you one suggestion. Back in the 50s and 60s, there was a concerted effort around the country to train everyone in basic first aid, to really be able to assess a situation where somebody might be injured and not intervene as a medical professional, but to be able to provide some help until the professionals arrived. Well, there's training like that now in mental health first aid, and not as a result of the suicide forums that we did earlier this year, but kind of concomitant to that. There were a lot of folks who went through what's called mental health first aid training. It's a one-day course for anyone, not for mental health professionals, not just for educators, not just for folks who are providing support to people who are experiencing crisis, but really for anyone, just like anyone would want to be trained in basic first aid. And what it provides somebody is a basic 5-step plan to help somebody who's having a mental health crisis until the appropriate interventionist can work with them, a mental health professional. It was eye-opening. It was helpful. I immediately became aware of everyday situations that we might turn our head to, where by just being able to ask a couple of questions, you could get that person stabilized and directed, and then directed to the help that they need. So I would just recommend that maybe the Chamber of Commerce, or those of you who are in the business community who are looking for what can we do? What can we do within our country, in our company? Just remember that people who are having these crises are not only having them at home and then leaving those feelings of anxiety and despair at their door when they come to work. They're bringing them bringing those issues with them to work. So mental health first aid. Unfortunately, Nueces County MHID is not offering that training right now because it is an 8-hour in-person training. But hopefully when people are able to gather together, MHID would be a good resource to contact. And I can share that information with the chamber staff. They're a good resource to contact. There are others who might be certified to provide that training in the community, but that's definitely something that, we really need everyone in the community, a broad base of people who are aware of what to do when you're dealing with someone in your family or who's at the next desk, or they're in the workplace or at school. We had a lot of school personnel who were trained in mental health first aid, just to be able to provide a helping hand. And so I offer that as a suggestion.
That's a great suggestion, Scott. It's John LaRue, and that was something I was thinking of asking your group, is what can the business community do to try to help this? And I thought of when I was at the port, we had a very strong wellness program with the Spawn system, who was our health provider, and we would have monthly luncheons and we would have quarterly checkups, but they were almost all, not all, some of the luncheons weren't, but they're really directed at your physical well-being and health. And the mental side, we didn't seem to spend as much time on. So I really like that. I really like to see us put together at the chamber or wherever, I don't care where it goes, but a program that could be offered to large and then to small businesses also, maybe small businesses in a group to get this kind of basic first aid for mental health. It's a great idea, and we would be glad to work with you and with the county, and maybe with the SPAWN system also.
Great.
Thank you.
One thing I just wanted to share also just before, because I know I'm not sure how much more time we have, but for Dr. Zerwas or for any of the legislators, the great divide right now is parents and kids with Wi-Fi, parents and kids without Wi-Fi. And as we're going through this, that's a big stressor that a lot of the parents are having, you know, is they don't have Wi-Fi. What can we do? Can we create hotspots? And like if we do create hotspots, well, really the kids can't go into the school right now. So they kind of have to be parked outside. It's kind of hot, things like that. So that is a big, I think, a big concern, you know, a big overarching concern that, you know, that to me seems to be the great divide right now. Who are the kids with or without Wi-Fi?
Okay. Tristan, do you have any questions that the group has asked?
Yes, I do. Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. To our speakers, I just wanted to say thank you for all taking the time to speak with us today, and to our members. I know the dialogue from this call is certain to have a positive impact on our community. In fact, I just got an email from Driscoll Children's Hospital's Child Abuse Resource and Evaluation Team. They're participating. They're on the call as well. And like I said, they just reached out and asked to be involved in this effort. This is a team that, from what I'm aware of, is comprised of forensic nurses, master's prepared social workers, and child abuse pediatricians. So first off, I'd just like to thank them for their interest, and we'll certainly get with them after this call. The first question I have, and feel free for any of our participants to give your input on them. As our state begins to reopen, what advice would you give people, just regular employees who are worried about going back to work?
Well, I'll jump in on that one. That's because that's kind of what I'm in the middle of these days, and that is, you know, going through the kinds of things that we know will create a safe environment in the midst of a viral outbreak like this. You know, there's a lot of anxiety around this whole situation, but what I would, you know, just advise people and hope that they'll understand is that a strict stay-at-home effort, although it contributed to us flattening the curve and really getting us in a good position on this, the most important thing that we can do now, and it will be effective because it was effective before we had a stay-at-home order, and that is just the social distancing, the good personal hygiene, especially the hand washing, hand sanitizing. And what came around later from a CDC recommendation, their thought changed on this, was the use of masking. Masks are going to just be part of our wardrobe, if you will, for the next several months, frankly, until we get something that can effectively treat this disease or vaccine for it. The masks have a couple of functions. N95 masks, as you have heard, are masks that actually protect you as the person wearing it. In other words, it'll filter out the virus particles and protect you. And if you are an individual who is in that highly vulnerable group and you're going to be getting out, going to the store or things like that, I would highly suggest that you wearing an N95 mask. All other masks, including cloth coverings or surgical masks, are masks that protect others from you. In other words, what it will do is it will trap the droplets that come out of our mouths whenever we talk, cough, sneeze, anything. And it will capture those droplets, or they'll cause those droplets to drop so that they don't end up in the air and potentially contaminate somebody else. Now, they could drop off onto a surface or something like that by all means. And, there needs to be good hygiene on that and good sanitation on that in various areas. But ultimately, what I like to encourage people is that the best thing that we can do as we all go back to engaging our economy and our businesses is to just sort of recognize that the CDC and the group of doctors that I'm working with who are vetting all the openings of the businesses that are coming up, which have come up and are continuing to come up, are basically looking at this from the standpoint of what is the best practice recommendations as you go back into the work environment and we start to engage with each other more. It's a balancing act for sure. We can't all stay, in our homes without going out and making a living. We've got to get out and make that, because if we don't, the detriment to our health as a consequence of the economy not being revived is, as we like to say, sometimes the cure can be worse than the disease. We're at that point where we need to balance this situation that we're in, because we're going to be in it for the next several weeks or months if we don't see some kind of a therapeutic come up other than what we've seen, or if we see a vaccine, which I think even in the most aggressive expectations would be by the end of the year, which is obviously several months away.
Thank you for that. Next question I have, and again, for anyone who would like to answer it, as those over 65 are particularly at risk in regard to COVID-19, they've been instructed to isolate and stay at home as much as possible. Are there any tips you'd give our older family members to get them through this? I know from personal experience, it's been hard not being able to see my grandmother, so I can imagine, how that's been for a lot of families.
Yeah, well, and I'll let others speak to. They can speak to the mental health aspects to it as much as I can. The term that I like to use, and you've heard used probably a lot, is that we need to cocoon the people that are particularly vulnerable to the horrific consequences of this virus. That's the elderly. It's typically you can take it 65 and older. That's going to account for the vast majority of deaths that we see as a consequence of this. When you get into the nursing home population and you get into the over 80 population, they account for a great deal of some of the deaths and negative consequences that we're seeing with the disease. The best thing that we can do, and I highly advise this, is that we need to just protect that community as much as we can, and that community needs to also recognize they need to protect themselves as much as they can. As much as individuals might want to get out and be part of the community and so forth, you have to just be very careful with that as you get older and as you have perhaps other diseases on top of what you personally are struggling with and stuff. So it's until we get that place where we've got an effective, convenient therapeutic agent and or we've got a vaccine that we know will work, we're going to be in this situation where we're going to have to really protect our vulnerables out there, which would be your nursing home patients, people in any kind of institutional type setting. It includes people in our jails and prisons, people that are in just certain living circumstances that can make them highly susceptible to the virus. And I'm going to sign off real quick because I have another call I need to get on. Mr. Chairman, I apologize, but
no problem.
Thank you very much, for having me on, and thank you all for doing this. This is just an exceptionally great thing for your community. I applaud you for that, and y'all are leading the way. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Thanks for your friendship.
Thank you, Doctor.
Take care, John.
Absolutely. Bye now.
This is a question from Kim Johnson. She's on the Tolosa Midway ISD school board. She's a trustee. And she's quite simply just asked, what can we as a school board body do to assist your efforts on a state level?
Well, one of the things that you can do is I'd like her to coordinate with Angie, Cissy, and Scott, because we will be coming up with a program with our high school students as well as our college students. We're going to have a legislative program going in to January. And that's a great question because we don't go into session until January, but right now is when we can start writing the laws. So if you'll reach out to Angie Flores with my office, and she'll coordinate with Scott and Cissy and get everybody together. But it's a great inquiry, and we certainly want you involved.
I'd also suggest, in addition to what Representative Hunter suggested, is work with your regional TASB representative to make sure that these issues around teen suicide are front and center on the TASB legislative agenda, so that there are voices from around the state, so that Representative Hunter's not having to carry the mail all by himself. That you've got a lot of folks from around the state. I think if this became this issue of teen suicide became a significant issue for the Texas Association of School Boards, that would be very beneficial and helpful.
Definitely.
And just a final question I have. Should there be, this is maybe for you, Representative Hunter, should there be a look at potentially an increased importance on school counselors when schools open up again? Unfortunately, one of the potential downfalls of prolonged stay-at-home orders, as discussed, is the likelihood of increased child abuse. The possibility that there might not be enough qualified counselors worries me, because many young people don't really know where else to go. I'm not sure that many young, especially 12-year-old and under, would know to be on this call right now and hearing of the hotlines that there are available. And all they really know of is, okay, whenever school gets back, I can go see my counselor.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yes,
I think all three will say yes. Even Dotson will put him in there. And John, the answer is just like Cissy and Scott said, absolutely yes.
That's one of the things that actually the students had brought up. That's one of the things we were trying to kind of push forward, is the high need for counselors for our kids, because there's just not enough. The counselor, the student ratio is probably about 400 to 1.
And I would build on that to say that, really an emphasis on counseling that's focused on emotional health and well-being. Right now, the certification guidelines for school counselors focus more on academic counseling, and there are some barriers there, and we're going to continue to push that. I think when the legislative body meets again, this is also a state board of education issue, really, but a lot of folks who are very well qualified in terms of emotional and mental health counseling for young people, they don't meet the certification qualifications to be school counselors because they haven't been teachers. And so that's something we really need to look at, is how can we get folks maybe who haven't been teachers, but who have that expertise connected with our students in schools. And that's something that maybe in the long term we can get changed, but absolutely need more of those folks on the ground as these issues really continue to present themselves among our young people.
Well, John,
Okay.
I'll kick it back to you.
Okay, I just want to make throw a couple commercials in here. One, and with Scott and Todd on the phone, I can't resist this, but we are in open solicitation season for Leadership Corpus Christi. And those of you on the phone, you really take a look at the program. It's a great program. It's going on right now. It survived through this by doing things virtually. In fact, they had a class, I think they had one this week, and I think they had one yesterday. But get in touch with Cissy at the Chamber. You can go to our website. There's a lot of information there on Leadership Corpus Christi. It's a great program. So take a look at that. The other is next week on May 13th, the Port of Corpus Christi is having what was going to be in person in DC, an all-day energy program. Obviously, it's not in person now, but the program is taking place. They have Senator Cornyn, Senator Cruz, Congressman Cloud, Congressman Cuellar, Congresswoman Fletcher, the port director from Houston, and Sean, and there'll be several different programs with some of the major companies in Texas that are working their way through this energy situation, which is just piled on top of COVID-19. So if you're interested in that, you can go to the port's website. You have to register beforehand, but I think it'll be a fascinating seminar, and we will probably be doing another one next week. We're working on a topic right now. I don't have it for you yet because we haven't locked it in, but I really appreciate our leaders here with our two state reps, with Todd and Abel doing a great job all year, but really when we have problems like this, whether it's Hurricane Harvey or the virus, the way they step up along with Senator Hinojosa, getting Dr. John Zerwas from the state, and getting our two leaders from A&M and from school district. It's a real plus to have all of you on. Thank you for taking your time. Todd, any final thoughts?
Just thank you all and everybody that participated. This is a big subject, and we're not just talking, we're moving forward.
Okay. Tristan, back to you.
That's it, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.